Hello, everybody. I'm Pasha Marlowe, and this is the Let Pleasure Be the Measure podcast. I'm here with you today from my new digs. I just moved in yesterday. So I have a new backdrop, which is just makeshift and might not be what I have next week or even tomorrow. And around me, surrounding me, are boxes. So my pleasure today is going to be within this screen and behind me, talking to this delightful guest that I have today, Laura Zam, who is the author of The Pleasure Plan, One Woman's Search for Sexual Healing. Laura is also a sex educator, a trauma professional, and I love this one, a pleasure warrior. I feel the same, and I'm so thrilled that you are here and that we can finally talk and converse about pleasure. Welcome, Laura.
Thank you so much. It's so happy to be here. Thank you, Pasha.
Yes, I'm thrilled. I feel like you're my first guest because I feel like this is just a whole new beginning for me in so many ways, and it's gonna be a more raw season, and truthful and unfiltered and untamed and all the things that
Yay.
that you participate in as well. So yes, we'll have a juicy conversation about pleasure and trauma and everything in between. So you wrote a book, and it's called The Pleasure Plan. Can you tell us about that journey of the book and why you wanted to write that particular book?
Sure. Well, I got married for the first time when I was 46 after 3 decades desperately searching for love.
Hmm.
And I was so thrilled to have a partner finally. And everything was great, except I had 6 kinds of sex problems that were associated with childhood sexual abuse. And they were not a surprise, but they started to worsen as soon as I got married.
Hmm.
I couldn't really talk about what was going on. It was just a part of me, and I felt broken, and I didn't feel like there was any hope. And so I didn't have language, and I certainly didn't understand what the problem really was. But
Hmm.
I decided one day I was just going to challenge my shame. And I went on this very extensive healing journey. In 5 years, I worked with 15 different kinds of practitioners, and I tried 30 different healing modalities. And in essence, studied the cutting edge of trauma recovery, female sexuality, and healthy relationships. And I cured myself this way. And then I went on a mission to help other women get the information, the pleasure, the passion, the intimacy, and the aliveness that we all deserve.
Mm, beautiful. It's always so beautiful when we take our deepest wounds or pain points or shame points, and then we, through service to others and all this relentless, discovery of pleasure practices, you could turn it into something so beautiful and healing. And is the book specifically for women who have experienced sexual trauma or beyond?
Beyond. So in the book, the context is my sexual trauma, but the real journey is figuring out these different kinds of sex problems, including eventually I learned there's hormonal based things as I'm entering perimenopause and then menopause. But in addition to that, I had 3 different kinds of pelvic pain, issues with desire, with arousal, with orgasm. So there were a lot of different strands that I had to separate and really
Yes.
figure out.
And 30 different modalities later, which modality do you feel like made the most transformation for you?
Well, late in my journey, or I'd say the latter half of my journey, I started to really focus more on just pleasure education as opposed to earlier in the book where I'm looking at the trauma piece and how to heal that. Anyway, when I was studying pleasure really intensively, I came upon these different women they themselves are pleasure warriors,
Mm.
and they were teaching female sexuality, optimizing female sexuality. So in the book, I attend a naked weekend workshop with Betty Dodson, who
Oh.
passed away recently in October. But she was an icon who had been leading these masturbation workshops,
Mm.
interactive masturbation workshops since the 70s, with a mission, strong mission to teach women female pleasure. And I took one of her workshops. I was lucky enough to do that. So you really get into the nitty gritty, and she teaches a specific technique, and you try it out there in the moment in this circle with other women
Mm.
en masse. But there are cookies in the pantry afterwards. So,
We'll masturbate in public for cookies. Is that what you're saying?
well,
That's
no, it just all goes together, you know, it's just part of female sexuality.
pleasure. Yes. And
Pleasure.
I'm curious. I'm, of course, transporting myself into that situation in my head, and I'm thinking, how much talking and connecting and trust building has to take place. How did she do that? How did that happen? Where in a group you felt comfortable and safe,
That's a
pleasuring?
good question. Well, I think, you know, she was such an icon. So
Mhm.
it wasn't just anybody off the street. I mean, she was one of the people who invented second wave feminism. So she
Yes.
was right there in the center of the action since the 70s. And so just knowing that she was a reputable person and an important person in this field. But what she did was on day one, so you have to disrobe as soon as you enter her apartment. That's where she was holding it. And so you take off your clothes in the hallway, and then you enter the temple. And there are these backjack chairs, and you're sitting there, and there are these other naked women. And I felt very self conscious, of course. But after a while, it just becomes normalized. In the first day, particularly, we're just talking about our sex lives, all of us, and we're finding all this common ground. And of course, you know, people have a lot of shared experiences in terms of not feeling like we are connected to our bodies, not liking the way that our bodies look, a history of trauma, being with partners who have experienced trauma, feeling like we want more out of our sexual lives, but not quite sure what that is or how to achieve that. So I think there was so much commonality, and the fact that we were already naked was just, I don't know, it lended itself to people starting to feel very, very comfortable. And at the end, toward the end of that first day, you do what she calls show and tell, which sounds like, oh my gosh, how are you going to do it? But by that point, you're just like, okay, I'm going to do it. You show people your vulva. You sit in the chair, and then everybody scoots up closely, and you know, and then Betty talks about your vulva, and, you know, oh, look at this color, and oh, isn't this interesting? Look at how the inner lips, look at their relationship to the outer lips, and oh, isn't this so interesting? How this is how the folds are here, and you know, and she was very interested in empowering women around the way that we look, and not feeling ashamed, and certainly not feeling that were ugly or deformed, which she found was something, well, she said that that was the norm she felt in the 70s, but that it never went away, that
Mhm.
women felt like they were really ugly, quote
Mhm.
unquote, down there. And, you know, and also not normal in
Mhm.
this way. So she was very much about empowering that. So that was only one of the many
That's a big
pleasure
one. That was a
experiences I
bold phrase
did.
too.
But I found these women, a lot of them were postmenopausal women who were teaching pleasure. And they were, I call them goddess crones.
Yeah.
I just felt like it was a very interesting thing, because in my book, I talk about how there's something, very healing about these women coming in, swooping in a way, and healing parts of the body that were harmed, especially if, well, not especially, harmed by anyone and harmed at any point in this woman's life. That there was something almost like midwifery, you know, where you've got these wisdom filled women who come in with their herbs and their poultices and their knowledge, and they're going to put hands on, and
Yes.
they're gonna heal in this very, very active way. I
Mm.
felt very healed by this feminine energy. It wasn't a sexualized thing, despite the fact that I'm masturbating on the floor in Betty's apartment. Um, it was this very like a feminine healing that was
Mm.
counterbalancing the abuse, which was at the hands of a man.
Yeah.
There was just something really that clicked for me.
Yeah, it sounds much more soulful than sexual. There's a returning to yourself and a reclaiming of your power, your body, and your desire. I would imagine there were many women, and perhaps you were triggered by the sexual traumas in the past. And I'm curious how you have worked through triggers when they pop up, or how you've noticed other wise women work through their triggers.
Yeah, it's a great question, Pasha. So I was starting to, with this kind of pleasure education, I got really determined, and I took these kinds of risks because I felt like, well, I don't want this information hidden from me. I deserve the right to heal myself and get all the information I need, even if I have to be, you know, naked. So there was another workshop that I took. I said there were like several experiences like this. And in that workshop, which is touted by many to be a very, very healing experience for survivors, I got triggered by this experience.
Mm.
And I felt that it was, it just, I didn't feel safe. I
Yeah.
didn't feel safe in that environment. And so I needed to, well, there was an exercise that was supposed to be done naked. And I was like, no, no, I'm not going to do that. But I wanted to learn the technique anyway. So I said, oh, well, can I keep my yoga pants on? And they actually, the woman, one of the facilitators, she kind of shamed me. She's like, well, you know, so many women are healed by this, and kind of like gaslighting me. Like, what's your problem? And I said, I don't feel safe. I should have left, but I really I paid and I wanted to.
Hindsight, right, right. I know.
And my husband was with me, and it was a particular technique about how to stroke the clitoris, and I wanted him to learn. And so I'm like, you know, I'm here, you know, I want to get my money's worth here. I just don't want to like have an orgasm here in this room with other people, because that was the setup.
Yes, yes.
Um,
Was
anyway,
the
so
or
I had to listen to myself. What is that?
was this the orgasmic meditation?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Have you done it?
No, I've heard you speak about it. And so I was just trying to connect the dots, because I know you've tried so many things. I was trying to research how many things, research what you researched, and I couldn't keep up. You've done so much work. And what made you so relentlessly fierce about this search? Like, why was it so important for you to access pleasure and orgasms? Because people have relationships with themselves and others, and marriages are not without any pleasure or orgasm, but you really wanted to make sure this was part of your life.
I did.
Mhm.
There's a couple of things at play. So one of them that's important is that I'm the daughter of a Holocaust survivor, and my mother survived the war, obviously, but her parents were, and her siblings, three of her siblings were killed. And I always felt a great responsibility to make the most of my life. It's like my life needs to be big enough in some way to encompass those lives that were not allowed, that were not able to continue. people were not able to live out their potential. And so I feel a very profound responsibility to realize my potential. So I think that a lot of my drive when it came to this was about, I want to know the best of life. This is an important part. And then in addition to that, I believe that it's my activism, and a lot of it is where the emotions of my emotions connected to my abuse live. So
Mm.
there's, for me, the fuck you
Mm.
is, it's not so much it's not so much like in the street fighting the patriarchy. It's like, I want to know I have the right to reclaim this for myself or claim it for the first time.
Yeah.
Fuck you, you're not going to take this away from me.
Yes. Yes.
So to me, that's yeah, so that's a lot of where
Yeah.
my activism and even my anger lives, in this
Sure.
determination.
Yeah. Yeah. There's some grief and rage behind that.
Definitely.
And inherited trauma and inherited wisdom behind it, and such a responsibility. And are there days where that feels like too heavy or of a load to carry, that responsibility of generations of women who weren't able to receive pleasure, and that you're reclaiming it not just for yourself but for them as well, it sounds like.
Yeah. It doesn't feel heavy at all. It feels kind of the opposite, because it's about, okay, well, I need to make the most of my day. How can I make the most of my day? And so it relieves the heaviness, it relieves the busyness and the stress, because it's like, well, I've gotta I'm doing it for them.
Yeah.
I need to have this cup of tea. It's for all of us.
It's such a tribute. It's beautiful. It's beautiful. Um, it's such a powerful message. And when I watch your work, sometimes you offer very practical ideas and gifts, such as creating a naughty goodie bag. I saw your video on that, and it's fascinating to me. And I think my work is similar, where yes, you're talking about a naughty goodie bag and maybe a lacy bra or a candle or a vibrator, and you're coming at it through the lens of the Holocaust and grief and rage and fear, and I'm accessing my pleasure through grief and fear about my son's illness. And so a very dark place that's made survivable and thrivable, if that's even a word, through the pleasure. So when you present something like the naughty goodie bag, is that just a like a higher vibration that you almost use to get through a day that would otherwise be difficult?
Um, well, the naughty goodie bag is really more about reconnecting or connecting for the first time to a person's sensuality, which can be really dormant.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and for people who don't know, haven't seen this little video, and it's in actually this, I've got a guide,
Oh, okay.
a
Okay.
guide that people can download, a free guide that includes the naughty goodie bag and other techniques. I call them 12 playful, powerful rituals. So these are kind of rituals to just connect with ourselves.
Yes.
And so, in answer to your question, the inspiration came there, and on the surface, they're all about connecting or reconnecting to our sensuality. But as you were saying, Pasha, the context is, well, what is it that's preventing us?
Yes.
And maybe what's preventing us might be very difficult emotions, maybe crises we're going through. Maybe we have been very, very burnt out or hurt by things that have happened to us. And so there is a kind of reclamation of the life energy generally that I'm talking about with regard to sensuality, because I think sensuality is a linchpin,
Mm,
really is a linchpin for this expansive like full throttled aliveness.
Beautiful. Who do you feel inspired by now? I know Betty Dodson, you said, was your workshop facilitator at the time. Are there certain books or people that currently you follow for inspiration or rejuvenation when you find you need that extra little nudge?
Yeah, there's I'm trying to look. I've got these books. I've got a stack of books right here.
Nice.
Right above me. So there's there's so many really cool women who are in this space,
Yeah.
who are doing fascinating and very helpful work. So there's Mama Gina, also real she's known by Mama Gina. Real name is Regina Thomas Hauer, and
Yes.
she's very iconic herself in terms of teaching women about pleasure and owning their sensuality.
Yes,
There's
I refer to Mama Gina's work at all. She wrote, for those that are listening, Pussy, a Reclamation. And I really appreciate that her work is about, falling back in love with yourself, having an affair with yourself, treating yourself well, even outside of any sexual pleasure, it, treat yourself like you would your favorite dinner guest coming over. So it's very accessible. And I thought her book was easy to read, easy to follow, but a lifetime of work to do, mindset wise.
yes, it's a real shift in mindset. Really
Mm,
shift in mindset. She was doing these free workshops. They were teasers for her mastermind, and I did it 2 or 3 times. I wrote about one of them in the book, and there's a woman. Actually, this is in the book too, but I think it so clearly encapsulates what happens in a Mama Gina workshop. There's a woman there who said, I've got a master's, or I've got 2 masters and a PhD, and I'm smarter than everyone I work with. I'm fucking brilliant. And I'm tired of pretending I'm not.
mm.
And we were all like up on our feet, like, you go, you go. Yes.
Bragging, right?
Yeah, she does a lot of bragging, but just this ability to really be your full shiny self,
Yeah.
and not feeling like, oh my gosh, I've got to like dim my light. I don't want to offend. I'm sorry. Oh, I'm sorry. I don't, especially like tiptoeing around the male ego, and oh my God, I can't really
Mm-hmm.
shine here. I've got to make sure that the men in the room feel good about themselves. I don't want to be seen as a bitch. I don't want to be seen
Yeah.
as a smarty pants. I mean, we carry a lot of, I believe, a lot of messages that we can't be our full shiny selves.
Right. And to that point, I know so many women who are almost nervous to do some of this work because they know that there's such a part of themselves that has been dormant, that once you let it out, once you let the pleasure and speaking your truth and reclaiming your desire, you might find that you're more expansive than your current relationships allow. And then there might be a process of transitioning or even losing people, but the other side of it would be keeping it in, holding it secret, playing small. And I think you and I talked about this, how holding the secrets of any kind, of any of our truth, could create illness in the body.
Right. It
And
kills us.
yes.
It can kill us. Yeah.
Yes. You mentioned a particular book about speaking truths through writing and opening up about trauma. Can you tell us really quickly about that book that you referred to?
Yeah. So there's 2 books actually, and I'm happy to provide the links in the
Thank
show
you.
notes or whatever you have. There's a book called Writing as a Way of Healing,
Hmm.
by a woman named Louise DeSalvo. And it's a pretty fascinating book. She's metabolizing a lot of the data that's come out in the last really 30 to 40 years around this. But one of the researchers that's very prominent in her book is this guy named James Pennebaker. And or maybe Pennebaker. I'm not sure how he pronounces his name. Actually, I should find out. But anyway, his book is here, and I can give you the notes, and you can look him up. But he's got some fascinating research he's doing where, in a nutshell, finding that when people do not express what's going on inside of them, and he recommends writing
Mhm.
about this in a very specific way. But if we don't get this out of us in some way,
Yes.
that it really does hurt our health. And he has all kinds of studies around this. And
Yeah.
the contrary is true, that when you do talk about this, you improve your health, your immunity function literally goes up. So there's a lot to this.
Yes.
Very
And the book we were
interesting.
holding up, in case people were just listening,
Oh,
is Opening Up by Writing It Down.
correct.
And I love that there's
This is
maybe
my book, which I haven't held up yet.
please
I'm gonna
help.
hold up any book. People, let me want to hold up my book too.
Yeah, you do. The Pleasure Plan. Well bragged. Yes. Yes. So good. For some, it's going to be writing, and for others, it'll be speaking or podcasting or comedy or journaling or gardening or dancing or singing. And so I always say, whatever it is, all these truths, like, allow it to come out somehow, right? Even if screaming, even if you're not saying the words, like, allow the emotion to bubble up
Yes.
and then to release it. And hopefully people have a safe and empathetic sisterhood or relationship that allows them to fully safely express themselves. So yes, you have a new partner, and he is on this journey with you now. Had you done all of those pleasure practices and 30 modalities prior to meeting him?
No. I did it because of him, because I got married, and
Oh, okay.
yeah, I got married and I was dysfunctional.
So
And
he's really been on this journey with you the entire time.
oh yeah, he definitely has. And it continues, it really changed fundamentally the way that we respond to each other sexually, because we just I just incorporated all of this wisdom
Hmm.
into, okay, well, this is the way that I need to approach my sexual relationship with you, and can we create something that really that has this as a big part of the foundation. And what I'm talking about specifically is that what I want out of this, how do I want this to proceed? What do I want lovemaking to look like? What are the activities that I want? What time of the day? Which days? How often? I wanted all of that to be there as part of this. And I found for myself a big part of the problem. And I find this definitely with my clients. A big part of the problem, what we often term low libido, what the women think is low libido, is that they just don't like what's coming at them at 11 o'clock at night after a long day.
Mm. Yes.
It's not, sex is not on their terms.
Mhm.
And even the way that we teach consent is along these lines. It's very limited in terms of empowering women, because it's like, well, yay or nay, do you want this or not? As opposed to, hey, I don't want to just be in a situation where I'm reacting to what you're offering me. I get to write the menu. I get
Mhm.
to write the menu with you. I'm not just saying if I want the items that you're currently offering me at an inopportune time.
Yes, yes, you're co-creating it together. And
Right.
and is he equally empowered to say this is what he wants or this is what his menu is this evening?
Oh yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely. But I think that, and that's been, completely, it revolutionized the way that we work together in this way. And it certainly revolutionized what I teach, um, yeah, and even how I teach, because I felt that this empowerment piece was often missing.
Mm.
And yes, but it is a co-creation. It's not just, okay, well, now I get to be the one who dictates everything. It's just having everyone's voice in the room to really figure this out together and to achieve this mutual pleasure.
Hmm. Beautiful. And do you work with couples often?
I don't work with couples that often. No, I work mostly with individuals. I
Mm-hmm.
have worked with couples, but for the most part, my clients are women who have something that they're trying to achieve. And a lot of the work that I do with them is solo, even if they're in a long-term relationship, because there's a reclamation that I believe that needs to happen that is that doesn't involve the pressure that a part or the expectations that a partner may present. So it's not like a person has to stop having sex with her husband in order to take a workshop with me, but I do recommend certain practices that she do on her own. Let's say if I'm doing an 8-week course, she might spend a half of that, 4 weeks of that, just really gently finding this connection to herself in a really authentic way, so that that can be the foundation she can take to her partner. Because otherwise there's too much of a tendency to pretend,
Mm-hmm.
to pretend that there's more enthusiasm than there is, to fake orgasm,
Yeah.
to pretend even, even small things like to, um, like, oh, this is what a woman looks like when she's aroused. These are the kinds of things. Oh, I'm supposed to wear this kind of lingerie and
Mm-hmm.
arch my back.
Mm-hmm.
um, but it's not authentic. It may not be really what's stimulating or satisfying for her. It's just an idea of what it is. And so we've got to like pull things back and just really find, what is it that you like? Where does pleasure live for you, individually, divorced from that?
Yes, yes. I know for myself, when I went through that process, I realized that I didn't want to participate in sex with my partner. I kind of took intimacy off the table for a little bit while I was doing that self exploration work, and it just was the space I was in. But then I also, in that work, realized that I hadn't even explored a part of my sexuality that I hadn't allowed myself to even explore. And so recently coming out as bisexual, but that process was only because I took the time to really listen to what is it that I desire. So I'm curious with your work if that comes up often as women start to reclaim their bodies. Do you find that sexuality evolves or expands? Is that a common occurrence?
Yeah, definitely. There's a lot of, yeah, it may be, it's common in my work. I find that people want to explore different kinds of relationships, maybe polyamory, maybe bisexuality, maybe kink, just like a real expansion, because now they're starting to feel a freedom to explore that potential. And I think a lot of women are interested in their sensual potential, that maybe we've been made to feel, oh, okay, this isn't important. We don't have to really see how far this can go for us. I mean, by far, I don't mean out there, as much as realizing ourselves in this way, developing ourselves the way we might develop any part of our lives.
Yes, yes. Beautiful. Oh, and there's so many directions to go with pleasure. I know I feel like I could talk about pleasure practices, but also the trauma responses. You have such a broad wealth of knowledge and experience in this. I know you're doing some workshops coming up. Do you want to tell us about those in case people want to find you?
Yeah, sure. So I have a new workshop, or it's an online course that I'm launching in the next few weeks. It's called the Libido Lab,
Mm.
and it's a mini course. It's just an hour of content, although there's homework. So it's meant to be really experience with that homework, so it becomes really very experiential. But it's teaching women how to have a libido. What I found was that libido is a skill that can be taught. And I wanted to teach those skills. There's also a lot of misinformation about what female sexual desire is and isn't. So it's yeah, getting clear on that, and then teaching these very concrete skills and tools. So I've got that's going to be come up, and then I'm launching a big comprehensive 8-week course, which is right now working title is Reach Your Sensual Potential.
Nice.
And it encompasses some of it encompasses libido, but then it's far beyond that in terms of communication with a partner, in terms of developing our sensuality so that we can have an ongoing relationship with it. It's a lot of problem solving with regard to the different obstacles that come up. It's understanding our resistance. It's developing daily habits that keep that connection alive. So there's a lot of, and ultimately what people do is they develop a pleasure plan journal, of course, inspired by the title of my book, and basically this larger framework of, oh, okay, well, this is something that I'm going to create my own pleasure plan, ongoing adventures that are going to develop this part of myself. So they end the course having this pleasure plan journal that has all the component parts so they can continue that exploration forever, really.
Yeah. What a wonderful offer and practice that is. I will definitely post the links and whatnot to your book, to the programs and the ebook that you mentioned,
Yes.
and then the other resources. Yes, I feel like I want to have you on every single month because I have so many things I want to ask you and talk to you about. And I truly appreciate that you're another midlife woman going through menopause and not a highly sexualized appearance, that so many. Yeah. Oh, I thought your
Sorry.
husband was going to make an appearance. I thought he was going to
He
do
was, but he was trying to communicate with me.
guest. There was like a guest cameo that he was going to do. He's going to pop in and say, "Hey, I'm here."
I heard this whisper. He's like, "Can you hear me? Can you hear me?"
Well, we made it the whole time without a husband or a child popping into the screen. So we should count our blessings on that. And thank you so much. Thank you so much, Laura, for joining us today.
Thank you, Pashan. Thank you for the work you're doing. It's so important. And you're just this bright light of wisdom and inspiration. I'm just, yeah, so happy for you. Now you've got like this new beginning with this new space, and that's always always gives us like a new burst of energy to create a new phase.
Yeah, it's exciting to think about what new rituals I could create in this new home, and also just colors. And I'll probably do a podcast in every corner of the house to see what feels right. But today this was the quietest corner I could find in a little snap. So yes, thank you. And I feel like we're both riding on the tales of just generations of strong warrior goddess women.
Yes.
What do you call them? Warrior crones? What did you have?
Oh, yeah. Goddess crones.
Goddess crones. Yes. That finally now at 50 makes sense, and I honor it. I want to finally now understand women from my past. I guess if I'm finally maturing enough to realize their wisdom is so important. And of course, now that they're not in this physical world, I have to speak with them on a more spiritual and soulful basis. But I feel like the work we're doing, we're connecting with them and being inspired by them. And
that's beautiful.
Yeah. Such a pleasure. Thank you, Laura. And if anyone wants to continue the conversation with me, feel free to check out my website, pashamarlow.com. But also in my links, I provide a free 30-minute liberation call, I call it. So I would love to talk to you, and hear your story and talk to you about pleasure and how we can sneak it in. I sometimes say, how can we sprinkle pleasure into even the more challenging or darkest of days? So honor to be here and to do this podcast and to spread the pleasure word and the pleasure revolution to all women. Yes. Wonderful. Thank you. And we'll talk soon.
Okay.